The Enchanted Bridge. One ought to understand that before the lean and shadowy years, folk possessed a wisdom far removed from our own. They still knew the secret ways of the woods, where to whisper for the fairies, and which trolls were best left to their own devices. They were well versed in the virtues of herbs, and could read a person's heart as easily as a book. It was, quite simply, a different age, a kinder one, where a soul looked after its neighbour. People spoke with the beasts of the field and the greenery of the earth, and no one walked their path alone. There were those among them with senses so keen that, armed with nothing but a slender divining rod, they could cross a meadow and find a hidden spring with uncanny precision. They had no need for telephones, for they knew the art of speaking to one another across the greatest of distances. Indeed, there were even places where bridges spanned the rivers and lakes, but they were only half bridges. Let me tell you the tale of such a wonder. In those days, a person's will was a formidable thing. Thought and deed were woven into one. They could walk upon a half bridge and emerge on the far side of another, halfway across the world, simply by wishing or thinking themselves there. Imagine for a moment, you pack your kit or your trunk, step onto a half bridge in your own village, and find yourself treading the boards of a bridge in Japan or wherever your heart desired. It was no trouble at all, you see. But then the dark times fell, and that ancient knack for such travel was quite forgotten. But I must tell it in its proper order. One Sunday, Caroline had packed her small bag and set off to visit her grandmother, who lived a fair way off in Bohemia. She did so every first Sunday of the month, as regular as clockwork. She strolled along the lane until she reached the bridge that ventured halfway across the river. She closed her eyes, picturing the moment she would step off the other side into her grandmother's waiting arms. Bravely, she stepped onto the stones and marched on. She kept her pace even when the bridge had long since reached its end. To a bystander, she would have seemed to vanish into thin air, while in Bohemia, anyone watching the bridge would have seen Caroline simply appear out of the ether. It was considered quite ordinary, just the way things were. And yet, on this particular day, a hitch occurred. No one noticed, but as Caroline crossed the threshold, there was a rift in the very fabric of time. Such shifts had happened before, mind you, but this was a genuine mishap. A stumble in the grand clockwork of our vast universe. It mattered little to the stars or the earth, but for Caroline, the world was about to turn upside down. When she stepped onto the bridge in Bohemia, 100 years had vanished in a heartbeat. She was a little girl alone on a bridge, unnoticed by a world that no longer knew her. No grandmother stood there to greet her. Distressed, Caroline turned about, only to find that the half-bridge had grown into a complete one, spanning the water from bank to bank. Quite lost, she lingered at the foot of the bridge. She waited, but her grandmother never came. The folk passing by seemed a strange lot, dressed in odd fashions, and there wasn't a horse or carriage in sight. Instead, a peculiar brood of machines rattled to and fro across the bridge. "Now then, young lady, what's all this?" A kindly policeman suddenly appeared, stooping a little to look into her blue eyes with a reassuring smile. "Where might your mummy be?" asked Constable Heed, looking quite spick and span in his uniform. "My mummy is in heaven, sir. I only meant to visit my grandmother, but she isn't here." "And what would your grandmother's name be, Petal?" "Why, Grandma Martha, sir. What else would it be?" "And do you know where she lives?" "Oh yes, I come every month, just down the road there." Caroline pointed towards a wide thoroughfare, though the street does look rather different today. "Well, let's go and have a look-see, shall we?" Constable Heed offered his hand, and Caroline walked away from the bridge with him, following the familiar path she always took to her grandmother's house. "There," she said, pointing to a house. "But it's changed somehow." "Are you quite sure you don't know her full name?" the constable asked once more. "Grandma Martha, my mummy's mother, who's already in heaven." Right then, let's give the door a knock. Perhaps she's just having a nap. After much knocking and ringing, the door creaked open. But it wasn't Grandma Martha. It was an elderly woman leaning heavily on a cane whom Caroline didn't recognize in the slightest. "Yes? What is it?" she rasped. Caroline felt a shiver of fear. "That's not my grandma." "And whose grandma am I supposed to be then?" the woman retorted. The policeman stepped in. "This little one, Caroline, is looking for her grandma Martha." "My name is Isabel," the woman replied, "but I've no children of my own, so I'm no one's grandmother. My sister Martha had a daughter, but she passed away far too young. Martha had a granddaughter once, but the girl stopped coming to visit many years ago." "But I am here," Caroline cried out. "I'm here, just like every first Sunday of the month." She felt as though the world had gone mad. "Where is my dear grandma?" "Oh, child," the woman sighed. "My elder sister has been gone these 70 years. I moved into the family home after she passed." The constable had a sudden brainwave. "Tell me, Caroline, how old are you?" "I shall be 10 this December, sir." "And do you know the year of your birth?" "Why, yes, December 1851. My word, that simply can't be right. For the year, you see, was already 1961. How on earth did the child get here?" the old lady asked, baffled. "I walked across the half-bridge," Caroline explained, "as I always do. But when I arrived, it was a whole bridge. It's never been like that before." "Half-bridges? I thought those were just old wives' tales," the constable mused. "Oh no, sir. You just have to believe in them with all your heart," replied Caroline. She had often made the trip from Budapest to Budweis. In the beginning, she had gone with her mummy, but since she had gone to heaven, Caroline had braved the journey alone. "How shall I ever get back to my papa?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He'll be wondering where I've got to. But if the half-bridge is gone, the magic won't work. I fear that even if you do get back, the time there will be quite different from the one you left behind." "What a muddle," the constable muttered. He was quite at a loss. How a girl could set off in 1861 and arrive in 1961 was a question he simply couldn't answer. He took Caroline by the hand, they bid the old lady farewell, and headed down to the police station. Perhaps someone there would know what to do, though Constable Heed had never seen a case quite like it in all his years on the beat. "Aren't there any half-bridges left at all?" Caroline asked. "Half-bridges?" The folk at the station chuckled. "What use is half a bridge? You'd only end up in the drink." But then an old hand spoke up. "Wait a bit. I've heard tell of a half-bridge, though it's not in this country. It's over in France." Caroline didn't blink. "That doesn't matter. Budapest is in another country too, and I still manage to visit my grandma every month." Constable Heed was given special leave to take the girl to France, where this fabled half-bridge was said to be. They travelled by train through Hungary and Austria, through Italy, and finally to a town called Avignon. The journey was a long one, but that mattered little to Caroline. Her only thought was of her father, who must surely be distraught with worry. "Well, I never," Constable Heed breathed, utterly astonished, as they stood before the half-bridge of Avignon. Caroline said a proper and fond goodbye to the man who had been such a stout companion on her long journey. She asked him to stay back as she stepped onto the bridge. She thought of Budapest, of her beautiful home, and of her dear father, who would surely catch her in his arms the moment she reached the end. She closed her eyes and walked on. Constable Heed watched her go, his heart in his mouth, certain the poor mite was about to tumble into the river. He began to run after her, but at the very last second, he saw that she didn't fall. She simply kept walking, even though there was no bridge left beneath her feet. Then she vanished, as if passing through an invisible curtain. Time itself must have been waiting for that very moment to mend the chaos. With a snap of its fingers, the rift was sealed, and the natural order restored. Caroline, meanwhile, opened her eyes with a bit of a shiver and was relieved beyond measure to find herself back home, taking her final steps upon her own half-bridge. There stood her papa, who caught her up in a great hug. "Well then, how did you find Grandma Martha?" "Oh, Papa, if only you knew. It's a very long story." They went home, and Caroline told him every single detail. Constable Heed took the train back and had a proper yarn for his mates at the station. Of course, not a soul believed his story about the magic bridge in Avignon until the day he retired. At home, over a steaming mug of cocoa, Caroline told her papa all about the train and Constable Heed. Her father listened with a very grave face and said, "Next month, when it's time to visit your grandma, I shall come along with you." And so they did, and lo and behold, in Budapest, all was as it should be. They stepped off the half-bridge, and Grandma Martha was there to greet them. Caroline was ever so relieved. There was no sign of a Constable Heed, but that was only to be expected. They spent a lovely afternoon at Grandma's before it was time to leave. "Give my love to your sister, Aunt Isabel," Caroline said as they said their goodbyes. "Why, however, do you know about my little sister?" "I'll tell you that tale on my next visit, Grandma dear." And as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Caroline and her papa stepped back onto the half-bridge and whoosh, they were home again. When you're a bit older, perhaps you'll travel to Avignon yourself and see that half-bridge. It's a real place, you know. But I suspect you'd need to know where the other half is for the magic to work. Now then, off to sleep and dream of wonderful things. Tomorrow, I'll tell you another story.